All right.
Good evening, everybody. Call this meeting to order. Today is Wednesday, January 17th, 2024. And we'll begin our meeting at 6 o'clock. If everybody would stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So with roll call, we'll start on the end.
Jerry Lincoln.
Scott McVeigh.
Pam Beaver. Beverly Fickus.
Logan Johnston.
And Paul Kelly, General Manager, and we have Shannon Perry with us for her first meeting as newly appointed admin assistant.
Okay.
And Madam Chair, I would just mention, this is the first meeting of the year. It appears to be the district's practice to elect a chair and vice chair at this time. And then also, it's also a district practice to name or confirm standing committees, but because of our admin policies that has community members, I thought we would wait until we got to that item under the regular calendar. So there's two, if you might notice in the standing committee, community membership selection and assignment, there's a reaffirmation of your current committee assignments and then the community appointments.
Okay, thank you. So, for everyone to know, I've served a year as your chair, and I am stepping down and to give everybody an opportunity to, cycle through and be the chair for the board. I'm not one to try to be the chair for years on end, so not my cup of tea. So, with that, I personally would like to elect Terry Lincoln as the new chair.
So, Madam Chair, the way you usually do this is you have the authority to nominate, and then we would look for a second, and we would look to see if anyone else is nominated, and then you would vote for that nomination. And then we would do that for the vice chair.
That was the right terminology, was nominate. Okay.
I will second that nomination.
Anyone else with someone that was wanting chairmanship? Nope.
No, thank you.
Okay, so do I need a motion or just?
No, you just say all those in favor
Okay.
of the nomination.
All those in favor of the nomination as for Terry Lincoln as our new chair, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
And now it's time to, wait, before you do that. I know you're excited. The last responsibility would be to open the floor for nominations for vice chair.
Okay.
Or you could do that.
Before I relinquish, I'm going to open it up for nominations for vice chair.
I would nominate Director Beaver.
I'll second that.
I would like to nominate Scott McVeigh.
I'll second that.
Okay, so actually, you vote on the second one first, and then vote on the first one second.
Okay, so with the second nomination was for Scott McVeigh. And I had a,
You have a second?
yeah, I
Yes,
did.
Pam
Yeah,
Beaver.
Pam. All those in favor of vice chair Scott McVeigh, please say aye. Aye. So do I have to go to?
Nope.
Nope, okay.
You elected the vice chair. Okay, we're gonna take a quick break.
I tried.
My suggestion is the chair sit in the front, if it's okay, but if the board's okay with you running the meeting from here, we're okay.
Anybody got a problem with me staying here?
Absolutely not.
Thank you.
Because that was in the past, Johanna was over there too, so.
Well, that that was a little test on how obedient the rest of the board is.
I think
If
the
they,
board
if
should-
any of them said no, then you would know.
When I get the gavel, I wanna use it.
Oh,
Oh, well.
You didn't get my coffee. Do I have to hit the gavel to bring it back to order?
No, still in order, we just, the minutes will note that we've reassembled the
Off
placard.
your agenda, you go to.
And with that, Mr. Chairman, we get to item 4, which is the public comment, anyone wishing to address. The board of directors on matters not listed on the agenda should raise their hand and they'll be called by the chair.
Anybody got anything to say? Sandy?
Shannon, thank you for the nice notice that you put in the newsletter for our Firewise meeting. It's gonna be January 25th, Community Center, 6 o'clock. We got food, beverages, a speaker coming on, excuse me, homeowners insurance policy problems, people that have been canceled. She's an expert. She's been there, this will be her second time at our Firewise meetings. Very knowledgeable. And also we'll be showing a DVD. It's gonna end up being a YouTube. It's easier on that new, TV that they have down at the center. We practiced last Monday and it didn't work too well. So the YouTube's gonna be easier. It's the 1999 fires, and, it's 40 minutes long. I had it, transcribed without any commercials. Unfortunately, it was VHS. It's 24 years old. The quality of the picture is not really, HD. You didn't know what it was back then. But, he did enhance the sound. The sound is really good. The committee decided we're gonna fast forward out some of the other fires, but there's a tremendous amount on, the canyon fire, especially, Strawberry Lane. So hope all of you will come. It's, should be a very informative meeting. Thank you.
Through the chair, my understanding is this meeting is also gonna be taped and put on YouTube. Is that right, Caitlin? So-
Okay.
oh, good.
That would be very helpful, since a couple of us are gonna be at a Mid-Pacific Water Users Conference. Otherwise, the easiest way to get me there was offering a cookie, so I was gonna be there, but I'm out of town.
Thank you.
Anybody else have, anything to say? Okay, next is the consent agenda.
Thank you. Through the chair, pretty much everything is as is laid out. You have the minutes. I will let those that are signers comment on the items. As you know, one of the things we did about 3 or 4 months ago is if a bill catches one of the signers' eyes, they'll flag it and we'll put it in the packet. And also, so I'll leave it at that and let them comment, question.
I have a comment. What the time that Pam and I were in there with the ability answering page service, so there's quite a few pages of that just kind of shows you all of the calls that came in during that period, and the breakdown of the times. And I just kind of thought it was important that, you know, is it a big deal or not a big deal that we get a lot of calls at 11:55 that go to the answering machine and calls at 4:40 or 4:54? I don't know how quickly can you turn that answering machine on, because it should actually be the last thing you do before you're locking the door. And so when I see those calls being forwarded at 11:56, 11:54, it's just bothersome. I don't know what the cost is for each call, but when you add them all up, it's significant. So, you know, Saturday calls, what day was this one? I think, on 11/9, which wasn't the holiday, but that must have been a water break. Because, I mean, we had like, you know, and then on the holiday, we also had a break on,
Yeah,
was
that
it
went into
continued?
that,
I mean, oh my gosh, you've got a full page of just calls on the holiday. I guess there's nothing we can do about that. So unless, I know we talked about it at some point in time about doing a different kind of thing. You've reached this number, you know, call back, or if it's an emergency, call this number. So just something to keep in mind. It was just a little bit eye-opening.
It is, and I'm very appreciative of you flagging it for this. I will say it took quite a bit of effort by Melissa to actually get this out of Ability.
Yeah.
I think we've communicated that we may be open to some alternatives in the future. And I know I reported to the board that I checked into some other answering services and other districts, and all the other ones that are potential are less than satisfactory. Trying to be nice about it.
Yeah.
And I checked into some answering services, all the way to the Bay Area, because there's nothing really close. And they can hardly get on the phone to answer my questions, to be honest with you. And they would pass me off, and then I'd wait for 10 minutes, so.
Yeah, and I think,
And for the public, it's, this particular month, $439 a month on answering service. So it may seem petty, but when you add that up, $500 a month, or, you know, 400, it's significant.
you're getting, yeah, 5,000 or 6,000 a year.
Yeah.
And then, so, and definitely we'll let staff know about some of these times. I do know, because there have been times where they won't even answer when trying to roll calls at 5 or 5:10 or 5:15, and I've sent staff home, and I'm here at 5:30 trying to get hold of them to take roll calls. So I don't know what the.
So what do you mean by that? The system didn't click over?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I'll let them know about just some of the different times, and I think, so one alternative might even be if we get more, now that we got a little bit higher speed internet out here, and we potentially have fiber, there could be a way in which you sort of screen these calls with, you know, if you're calling after hours and you have a question about your bill, call back during hours. If it's a leak, press this button and it goes to the answering service.
Yeah.
And then, you know, so then you could see probably a lot reduced.
Correct.
So those are things that,
Yeah.
again, as we move forward, hopefully.
Shannon, is there a message on the machine that says when you guys are at lunch, that, you're at lunch now?
No, we roll the phones at lunchtime.
Straight to the answering service.
I mean, to me, I'm looking back at it, and you go back to, October 16th, 17th, and then you go down to the 19th, and those are all during your lunch hours, or close to it. And if we could just say on an answering machine, I don't know if we have one, that we're at lunch if this is an emergency.
That's what Paul said, that they've got to look into.
Yeah, I mean, because you guys deserve lunch, but yet they need to know if it's not important, they can wait.
Yeah, well, one of the other things that, you know, does happen is, usually I take a little walk and I sit in my office for lunch, is we've spent the last 2 months telling UPS and FedEx to please stop coming at 12:22. You know, I mean, it's like, I know, but that's, we try.
I keep asking them not to leave my packages out in the rain.
So that was the big thing that I had.
Are you through?
I am, yes.
Scott?
Okay, I put in, flag the next one, but before I start with that, at the last meeting, I had asked a question about a particular invoice, and our general manager was not able to answer that question. I don't know if a note was taken, and he's prepared to answer it now or not.
I am not, because I
Okay.
don't recall.
All right.
It's sitting on my desk somewhere, and I'm probably gonna have to
Okay.
send you an email on
Yeah,
it.
just email me with that answer. It was a company I did not recognize. As a signer, I go through with a fine tooth comb everything, and, it's not something I recognize, so I appreciate knowing.
No problem.
I did flag the computer logistics, this is our software company, and we have some normal monthly charges, but this one fell outside of that to the tune of $825. So I did ask our general manager about it, and he did provide the appropriate explanation. Maybe he would like to share that with the rest of the board and the community.
Yeah, so the board might recall, it was about a year ago now that we were, signing an agreement with, Computer Logistics to supply, workstations, offsite, backups, a whole licensing and protection and security and all the rest of that stuff. And that comes to about $600, $585 a month, which is what Director McVeigh was mentioning. It's about $600 a month. They also proposed another $400 a month as a blanket on-call servicing charge. In other words, all this stuff would have been covered under that. And at the time, for financial reasons, we decided to, let's get a year's plus into how much it would cost if a month like this happened. And so we've got just little things like cleanups, we've got our new computer system that we need to get CUSI access, so that those are some of what these charges are. And so, $825 divided by 12 right now means this is a better than going with the extra $400 a month.
The
So-
PO does say it's a 3-month period though for the bill, so.
And that was the other thing. So right now, we're just tracking these, trying to give us experience during the year. But it was a good question.
Who's flagged Ferguson and,
Oh, Ferguson is
I think I did too. I did that just so we were aware and the community could be aware of the cost of even a couple of simple valves. And, just for those two, it was $7,500. Yes, that was like, wow.
well, just, I think
This chair falls.
you gotta know that it's a 24-inch coupling too. right?
Yes, it's a
So-
24.
It's not a little inch and a half or.
And it's a specialized coupling, I understand that, but, it's good for the board and the community to know that things are not cheap.
Well, and again, this one kind of is an example of something we'll touch on when we get to the item related to our 6 months financials.
Yeah.
When you have as many leaks as we have, especially on some large ones, those coupling, these are couplings that are replacing those that were used to fix a leak. Therefore, you gotta fill your inventory. So when you have a lot of leaks, as we had in the first 6 months of this year, you have a lot of rollout expenses. Again, we cover that a lot later, but you've got replacing your inventory expense, you've got other O&M expenses, including potentially fixing and repaving pieces of the road, and then you got a lot extra overtime, and so there's a lot of rollout
We'll get into
when there's a
that.
big leak.
And the Northwood backflow services? Is that for people that have wells?
Yeah, the backflow devices.
So everybody, all our accounts that have wells have backflow devices. There's, do you recall, Shannon, how many? 135-ish?
I believe it's 146.
Okay. So, they pay a fee for that. At times, in the past, the district had a staff member that would go and do the annual checks on these, but this is an outside the money that, the fee that people pay covers this cost.
That's good.
And pretty much every December. And in this case, I think there were 3 or 4 that failed, and so then we send the customer a letter, they failed, they need to be fixed or done something to them, and then we go back out and test them.
Is that all the ones that you did, like?
I think so, yep.
It-
For me.
Do you wanna, anybody got anything on this custom transaction detail report? It was before all of those, I don't know whether it was,
Some of them made up that, yeah.
yeah.
I would just mention on a couple of these, you know, like the Pace Engineering one is 35,000 and it doesn't have any memos because it was a single check for 3 different invoices, all of which are grant funded expenditures. There is one up above, that's a Pace one that does call out SCADA grant, that's Southwell Booster Project. If there aren't any from the board, Mr. Chair, we could ask the audience if there's any questions or comments of the consent calendar.
Has anybody got any questions on what we've covered?
Is the P and L for December in the consent agenda? Scroll back up, once I go from there. Yes. Do we wanna cover the P and L then for December, since it's part of the consent agenda?
Well, I mean, a lot of it's just gonna roll into our regular calendar.
That's
item.
6 months,
Yeah.
I know.
But I would just point out that if you do, there are a couple of items that may be of interest. Again, in your revenue base rate charge, it's just another example of the good work that our account clerk has done to bring in a lot more revenue, because if we divide that by 5711, you're gonna come up with more accounts that we actually have. So, that's good. The other one is, you
The
know,
80,000 line item, that's good to have.
yeah,
That's the, grant line item, so we know how much we paid out in grant funding, that will be reimbursed.
so again, you're gonna see this more when we look at our 6 months, but here's an example of in 1 month, we had almost $44,000 worth of expenses without an offsetting revenue from the state. So the state is gonna reimburse us for that, but probably won't show up until February.
Right. And didn't we have some rather large expenses in there also? I remember. Maybe not. I did want to point out though that the PG&E for the well, was down significantly. That was nice to see. A lot better than the $6,000 a month.
Again, we've been badgering PG&E every month over their standby charges for our wells. We did get a notice, as probably all the rest of you got, PG&E is raising their rates this year, starting this month, so.
Yep.
We'll see how that plays out.
Well, as a standby, would we be charged more? Or would it be rates for actual usage?
No, again, we'll see how it plays out. Obviously, they've raised the usage rate,
Yeah.
but the standby is your usage rate times the kilowatt hours that you need to click on, turn it on. So that's the standby.
Understand.
So
Yeah.
what we've successfully done is we got that kilowatt number down to get us into the hundreds versus the thousands.
800 versus 5,600? Yes. Not bad.
So far, so good.
Is that, anybody have any questions?
the consent agenda.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. The first item on the regular calendar is our standing Bureau account reconciliation discussion item and update. And again, there's really nothing to update other than just using this as an opportunity. We are still expecting to hear from the Bureau here in about 3 or 4 weeks, some preliminary water year projections. Everything so far, knock on wood, is looking decent. I know there was a newspaper article about the lake levels and doing fairly well. And as one who drives over it every day, I can report the water level is going up. We also, I think I reported that we had built up a little bit of a credit on our water account and that we were applying it incorrectly, and we worked with that on the Bureau. I then mentioned to you that this triggered the Bureau actually changing their recap spreadsheet because I guess just us and one other district was having this issue. So they sent it out to all 200 Central Valley project managers, and then I got a note last week that said that we underpaid the Trinity Public Utilities District charge in December by $3.75. And so I said, okay, we'll take care of that. But later then I had to send them an email. I'm sure I'll get no response. It said, by the way, the reason why you got shorted on that is because the formula in the spreadsheet you sent, I had to fix. So, little things like that. Oh, and then the other thing too, I know I mentioned it last month. I got a note saying that Jake Behrens, who's our primary representative with the Bureau, did get an email from Finance Divisions informing him that Clear Creek Community Services District had completed its obligation under the WIN Act, and that they were passing that on to the next desk to generate the letter that I think I told you that we were supposed to get. But regardless, I had him send me that email, so we at least have that, so we know that the district's obligation for the WIN Act is done. Obviously, we've borrowed against our operating capital to get that done, but at least that part will hopefully get done soon. I expect that this item, the account reconciliation, maybe a few months down the road, but we may have some numbers finally about it. So thank you. And then on the next item, which is our standing committee assignments and community membership selection. So there's kind of 2 sections here. At your annually, at your first meeting, the practice of the district is to assign or confirm the board member assignments to its standing committees. You'll see on the second page of your packet the current planning, or the current assignments. My recommendation is you just kind of confirm these, because some of you weren't appointed to the board until the middle of the year, and have only been, some of you are in committees that haven't even had meetings. I will say that, we have had finance committee meetings. We had an agriculture committee meeting in 2023, and we did have a planning and steering, and then we had 2 planning and steerings that were as the whole board. So one of the big accomplishments that I think we forget because we're so busy, but that planning and steering committee and the whole board meetings in conjunction with Emily Rankin, our volunteer, or super volunteer. I mean, we did update 12 policies last year, so I mean, we still have some more to do. And the planning and steering committee, I'm hoping we're gonna have a meeting in February, early March, to finish up on a couple more of those items, but mostly get started on our capital improvement plan stuff. So, there'll be stuff to do, but it's really up to chair and the board's discretion as it relates to the current assignments, and if there's any changes you wish to make.
Anybody wanna change? Are you happy with the way they are?
I'm happy.
Good, thanks.
I run two of the committees, I'm happy.
Yeah. Okay, is that all you need?
That's fine.
Okay.
Second part of this then would be community members.
Yeah. So as the board recalls, we had one of the other big accomplishments of in 2023, and I now realize, I thought about it at the time, I've been so busy on a few other items on this agenda that we should have had a little 2023 recap of all of our accomplishments, but one of the ones was receiving a grand jury report and responding to the grand jury report in a timely manner with a lot of great stuff on it, and updating our admin policies in compliance with that grand jury report. And one of those items is they have recommended, and we put in our policies, to add community members to our committees, standing committees. And so, as you can see, we started 2.5 months ago, posted applications to our standing committees. One of the reasons to do this is to get more community involvement in our committees, whether it's finance, agriculture, or planning and steering. We also, our committees are not decision-making bodies, even though they are covered by the Brown Act, so all meetings of the committees would be, open to the public. And so, and then if there's anything there that the board would have to act on, that could be recommended by the committee. So we do have the 3 committees. As it turns out, we've got 4 applications from the community. And I think the board had thought that we would invite, obviously, the applicants, interview them, or ask them a couple questions, or have them say a few words about themselves. All of their applications are in your board packet and posted on the packet. And then you can make an appointment. I think the board's admin policy says that, at least 1 additional community member. I think the thinking was of 2. It's really at the board's discretion, but I don't see any reason why you should stop at 2 if you wanted to put 3 on there, type of thing. So, again, it's really up to the board's discretion. We don't have any applications for the finance committee nor the planning committee. So I'm going to suggest at the end of this that we just put that back on the website and say there's still openings on here, and we'd like to invite those interested in these 2 committees.
I would like community input on the various committees. We held a finance committee meeting just last week, and nobody showed up. And prior board and management did a real poor job about transparency with the community. And I want all of you guys, anybody who's watching here, anybody in the community, to know what we're doing and know that they have a say in it. So I appreciate all of you coming tonight, and if you have any interest at all in any of these standing committees, please apply.
So, with that, Mr. Chairman, I suggest you ask each of your agricultural committee applicants that are in the audience to come up, maybe say a couple words, maybe ask a couple questions, and then you can decide.
Okay. I'm terrible at names, so I'm glad you put Doctor.
Audra.
I can do that one.
First off, thank you for applying.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah, just something short and sweet.
Just about myself, or?
Mm-hmm.
So I was born and raised in California, in Central Valley, and and, came up here, following a job, but, I got my master's in Kansas State, my PhD at Virginia Tech, all in animal science, and I currently work at Shasta College as the agriculture instructor. I live in Happy Valley, I live off of Strawberry, off Mount Pony, and so I haven't been in the community all that long, but, I happened to meet Ms. Jackie, and, she was like, yeah, we need community members, and I said, I don't know about that. She's like, no, you do. Come apply. So, I, don't know how much, I can contribute, but I'm happy to help however I can. I'm not in industry, I'm more on the education side, but, I have an acre, so I'm, just invested in water as I suppose anybody in the community is, so.
Well, I think that that's the one thing that everybody has to be aware of is, you say it's just you or whatever, but everybody together, we all add a little bit, and that's what makes a difference. And that's really what turned this water district around, was a lot of people doing a little bit. So we appreciate it.
No worries, I'm willing to do my bit. If you need my help, I'm happy to help, so.
So you're the ag instructor at the college. What do you know about the soils and the challenges here in Happy Valley?
I'm animal science, so not a
Okay.
whole lot. But, I can talk to you about livestock and their impact on the water and the needs of the community as far as, using livestock and using water, and for some people, that's their whole livelihood, so. I can speak to
Yes.
that more than I would
All right.
say.
Well, that's
soil.
It's important, we have plenty of ranchers out here.
Thank you.
Dennis?
I'm Dennis, what's your name? And I was raised as a farm boy, so I've been in farming, here and there. I own a farm back east, and we raise corn, soybeans, and it's got a little woods that we look at from time to time. But here, in Happy Valley, I hope that somebody will step up and represent, the olive orchards, cause that's our biggest ag here. And they, use a lot of water. And so, I hope that sometime that they get represented. I'll be glad to serve and help out, try to, improve the agriculture, encourage it, and, maybe boost the water up, water line that we use, and, that's about it. For me, unless you have
Of course I do.
a question, okay. Good.
Were you ever involved in the Happy Valley Farm Trail?
Yes, a long time ago, I was a part of the Happy Valley Farm, association. And then, the last time, it's been a few years, but I got the agriculture committee started again. It wasn't a formal from the board, it was kind of a side thing, but the board got it going. And it went for, like, the time kind of died out, but it was just kind of a small little group of citizens. But, yeah, we need to do a lot better than that.
It would be good to get it going again.
Yeah, and for the soil, put sulfur around it. Putting a fertilizer that's got sulfur and stirred up in the soil, you get a lot better, production.
Thank you, Dennis.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have questions for Dennis? Robert Wharton.
That's me,
Did I pronounce it right?
close enough for government work.
Well, thank you.
Well, I should confess I'm a carpetbagger. I've only lived out here 3 years. I was born and raised in David County. My grandfather was a member of the Board of Supervisors from 1917 to 1925. And I've been up here, since 70. I was deputy sheriff here for 13 years. I lost some elections for county marshal back when it was an elected office. And then I became a private investigator, and then I retired 4 or 5 years ago from doing that. I still have a license, but I don't do it for income. And I bought 4.5 acres across the street. And I do know a lot about soils, more than I want to know. We have good soil out here, but it's not the best. It's what's called silty clay loam and light on the loam. But there's a way to make it work for almost anything by planting a previous crop with deep roots. It dies. The roots leave a canal, and then they also leave nutrients. So there's different ways to make it work for everything. We have an unofficial growers association out here. I met a lady who was part of that. We need an official, and I would like to cause that to come into existence. Every man should know his limitations. I'm too old to be more than a member and a participant. I could be a voice for that to this particular board. There's a movement at the federal level that's small but significant, and that movement is also duplicated at the state of California level, small but significant, to induce more local produce, which includes cattle and chickens, etc., in areas close to metropolitan areas. Well, our metropolitan areas are small, Anderson, Redding, and Shasta Lake City, but we're applicable. And if we had that association and it was formal, there would be grants available to be sure we had what we needed, water, and that's what you folks supply. And I do research, or did research for a living for 40 years, and I can do that type of work. There are people here that are probably better suited. The cattle lady sounds pretty sharp on that, and the guy that started one of these things before too, it's not a life or death thing for me. I won't go home and cry, but I would like to be on the agricultural committee as a voice from growers, which would benefit me one day in the future, I'm a would-be right now, and others. And I think what the agriculture does in this area benefits this district.
Anybody got any questions?
Of course I do.
What would you like to know?
Out of curiosity, what are your plans for your property?
I want to put a raised bed garden in first in March, or maybe February. And then I want to plant some sort of crop that I won't really harvest. It's to go through into the soil to make those canals I talked about.
Sort of a cover crop.
Cover crop, yeah, maybe rye, maybe even alfalfa. And then eventually I would have out there about 36 English walnut trees, some pistachio trees. English walnut would be commercial, pistachio would be for me and friends, and then some citrus for me and friends. And then some sort of large crop. Red onions are a good one, garlic's a big one, if it doesn't cause too much of an odor for the neighbor. You have to play to the market, and garlic is a real good economic one, so something like that.
Okay, good to know.
Anybody?
Mr. Ward, what are your plans for down the road? You've got your garlic crop, it's coming in, you've got your onion crop coming in. What's your outlet?
Say that again.
Are you looking to get into the commercial market with this?
Yes, but not as you can make a fortune on an acre, you can make a fortune on 4.5 acres, depending on what you grow. But I'm not really into that. I want to supplement my retirement is what I want to do, and make a place of beauty and fun for me.
So are you thinking that you're gonna travel the farmer's market circuit, or are you gonna do a farm stand here in Happy Valley?
I would like to see this association come into existence and get a grant to actually produce a farmer's market. It would be an indoor outlet, which would also have crafts. There's several places out here to do that would be convenient for people in South Redding and Anderson. Red Bluff has such an association. I don't think they have a place like I'm describing, but they actually have delivery services from their farmers market to individual homes. And that is a thing that saves on so-called air pollution, but also costs too. So there's a lot of things that can be done out here. And again, we can't do much without water, so you folks are pretty important.
Fair enough, Mr. Ward. Thank you.
Anybody have one more?
Got one more, Jerry Hill.
I don't see him.
I don't either.
Don't either, so I've got thoughts on that.
Karen,
We've got three pretty quality applicants here, offer a pretty interesting cross-section of agriculture out here in Happy Valley. We've got education, we've got holistic practices, and then kind of conventional ag with Dennis. I say we keep all three as valuable members of that.
he's on the ag committee.
Sorry. I should have said, yeah, I'm second, but
He's
then on
kind of
ag.
speaking to me on the chair of the ag committee.
Yes, sir.
Trying to convince me that I already agree.
Mr. Chairman, I think what you're hearing is the germination of a motion. In other words, you can make a motion for 3 to be appointed to the ag committee, and then the board can.
Do I have a second for that motion?
Well,
Here's-
I'll make a motion that we keep all three for the ag.
And I will second that one.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's,
If the three of you could get your contact information,
We got it.
you have the contact, everything, emails, anything around, we will email you, let you know when we're gonna have, some ag committee meetings. I'd like to hold a minimum of 3 a year, depending on how associations, challenges for finding a site for a farmer's market because of insurance and other things. We'll discuss that at the first one.
It doesn't stop Mr. Hill though from coming to any of the ag meetings.
Oh, no.
No.
They're open meetings, the community
Yeah.
can come in.
Yeah. We have a
Only if you have a comment from a member of the public.
yes, ma'am.
Congratulations, by the way, to those of you that got appointed.
St. Winners, there's an excellent farmer's market out in Igo, goes year round. I sold out there this year, did really well. People just love anything that grows in the dirt. It's amazing stuff.
I
that's
grow
sold out
rocks.
there.
And I can testify it's really good,
Yeah,
and Sandy's corn is good.
thank you, appreciate it. We had a board member years ago, 1999 is when he was murdered. And, he was a horticulturalist, he worked for, Turtle Bay. His wife was also, one of the original, founders of the garden at Turtle Bay. And, he had a nursery out here. And luckily, as soon as he was on the water board, he was always bringing somebody to speak. He brought the farm advisor, he brought a guy that had a lot of good ideas on other things to do with your property where you make money, like let people come in and shoot ground squirrels for 50 cents a head. It went really well. And just, little ideas like that. And, like the farm advisor, when he spoke, he gave us a lot of information on the soils out here, very deficient in phosphorus. 1152 fertilizer. The olive orchards use a lot of 1620, which is nitrogen, but it's not that beneficial. That's just what West Coast was using back then. But, I've been on and off our ag committee a lot of times. I don't wanna get back on it. I'm committed out, I'm too old anymore. But, I plan on having a good garden this year. If I keep the deer out of it. They ate everything I planted except the corn. So, if anybody's got good ideas on getting, keeping the deer back from eating, I had deer this evening.
Dog.
Well, we're at our age, we don't want to get dogs anymore, they'll outlive us. So, there's just a few ideas. There's, if you wanna grow commercially, every Thursday, 2 o'clock, at IGO, and they do really well. Some of them that don't grow bring eggs. One guy bakes bread, really good bread. He's excellent. One lady makes her cowboy cookies and sells those. She does really well. And they go year round, even when it's 110 degrees, they set up out there.
Thank you, Sandy. Next thing on the agenda,
Right?
is fiscal year 24, second quarter actuals and budget adjustments.
Right. And I'll just also comment that those cowboy cookies are really good too. So another good you might have discovered, I have a sweet tooth. All right, so this item, just real quick background, just in case somebody, first time they ever see it on a video. One of our big accomplishments for 2023 was a significant overhaul of the budgeting process for the district. A much more, as I like to say, granular budget, in other words, more categories. When we adopted the budget on time in June, at the time the board adopted it, they said we want to have a quarterly review of our actuals to budget. Also giving us an opportunity to make adjustments if need be, but more importantly, just to sort of really keep track of things. So we had a quarterly review, the first quarter of the fiscal year, we did it in October, so that was July, August, and September. And so this one is through quarter two, right? So it's the first 6 months, so it's a mid-year actuals to budget review. And I think what it does is it gives us an opportunity to just see and recognize some things. One of the things that we've changed from the last report based on the feedback was the whole grant issue, right? How do we keep track of that stuff? So you'll see, like, one of the reasons why 6 months after, when you run our actuals to budget, there obviously are some things that we've spent more than budget. There are, through the year, and there's explanations for that. There's things we've spent less. But one reason why we're kind of negative is there's been over $300,000 worth of grant expenditures with $107,000 worth of reimbursements coming in. So those reimbursements will come in, but obviously when you put a marker on December 31st, that makes it look like you're a little bit behind. And I think it's just a couple of comments on that, and just as an example, that's why it's the first thing I put in here, of just recognizing that as desirable as we are to get as many grants as we can to replace the 50-year-old pipes that we have out here, to overhaul our treatment plant, whatever else that we may do, grants are great because like our Backwash Ponds project, that's over $5 million grant, is paying for all of that project. It's a complete grant, it's not a loan. But there is a cost of doing business that I don't think all the time the community may understand. So in other words, there's a cost of money, right? I mean, you pay, then you wait. So there's, right now, we're kind of on a small scale, but when you get into the millions, there's going to be some issues with that. And there's also, because most districts that I've worked in the past, they build up a reserve. Let's say they got $1 million reserve and they use that. So you pay from the reserve your costs that are grant based, and when the money comes in from the grant, you put it into those reserves. Well, as you know, this district let those reserves wane a lot up until recently. And so we're having to kind of use our operating funds to do that. So, but just to mention it there, so we have our grant fund expenses in the 8,000 range, the reimbursements in the 1,600 range. A couple other items I would just mention. If you're looking at the top of the chart and the revenue, the base rate revenue is about $135,000 over the 6-month budget. A lot of that has to do with the board's commitment to make our account clerk full-time, at that time Shannon, and her consistently going after delinquencies. And I think we've reported every month how much that's impacted it, because COVID, the state said you couldn't shut anybody off, so there were no delinquencies done for over 2 years. There was one little attempt done by at the end of 2022, and then really nothing done until July of this year. And so we've gotten well over $100,000 worth of just delinquencies, and 65,000 of it came from LEWOP, which is the state help. A couple other things in the revenue section, just to note. Most of us know that our property taxes are due just in, the final due date without a fine, the first payment is due in December, right? December 10th. And so all of that property tax payments to the county, when they distribute it to the districts, doesn't happen until January or February. So there's very little in property taxes of revenue, but we anticipate over $200,000 of property tax probably in January, and another close to $200,000 in hopefully May. Yeah, April or May. Because your second property tax payment, for those of us that pay it twice a year, the second one is in April. And then, there's another 6 months or 7 months, because it's behind Centerville O&M payments. It's probably another $100,000+ in revenue. Just a comment on the supply costs. We did buy McConnell water last year, so the last of that payment was really done in October, and then we got some free or not charged McConnell water in November and December. So we're a little lower than what we anticipated on our costs. Just, I mentioned it earlier about the WINAC payoff in our budget. We originally budgeted $250,000. We then adjusted that in October to $200,000. We accelerated those payments to get it done by the end of 12/31/23. So all $200,000 went out by November 1st. So obviously it makes it look like we're over by $100,000 in that expense, because you spread out the $200,000 over a year. I just want to mention the distribution O&M. We have had some significant repairs. We had some big leaks. We've had some that, all my guys are getting called out at 10 o'clock, 10:30 at night, and they're working sometimes 24 hours. We had a very significant one on Happy Valley Road that turned out that pipe was 20 feet deep. And, for safety reasons and everything else, we had to bring in Axner with all of their OSHA compliance stuff, so that a lot of that shows up as extra costs in our O&M. It also shows up in our extra cost and inventory. In other words, we're using stuff, so the inventory needs to get replaced. I think there was actually a coupling that I think we only had, for some reason, the previous replacement of the inventory replaced one of the couplings, so you need 2 couplings, and we had to go to the Reading yard to get one, and so when we purchased an extra replacement, we took it gave it to them. So just those extra costs, and then it rolls into some payroll expenses. We are a little over on our distribution overtime or distribution payroll expenses. And just for round numbers, so the community knows and so the board knows, for the first 6 months, we had anticipated about $9,000 worth of overtime for treatment, and we're currently at about $5,000. So we're actually a little under on our treatment. But we had anticipated, I think, around 12 or 15 for distribution overtime, and we're at about 20,000 or 35,000.
Yes.
So we're about 20,000 over. So hopefully we won't have as many leaks, we won't have as many of these large overtime expenses. The other big expense that was really unanticipated was our liability and auto insurance. We had budgeted, we took last year's auto insurance policy and we just put, 5 or 8% more on it. That was significantly less than what came in our, as you can see, our auto insurance, and we just pay it for the year. They don't do necessarily payments that way. But the auto insurance was $63,000 for all of for everything from our dump truck to our loaders and and all of our other trucks. So anything that's rolling stock, it was much more expensive. And again, you can see the grant costs. I mean, if you look at the bottom line, and I put a few notes on there on the back of this, it looks like we have a negative net income of $216,000. But if you back out all the grant stuff, we're actually positive by $6,000. And again, we still have all these other anticipated revenues that are expected to come in. Now, one of the things that we have noticed, and I have some budget recommendation changes. We had a OSHA and a safety expert that's paid for in the budget, comes out every year, does a report. They identified at the treatment plant that we weren't compliant for confined space. So in other words, we have, we've got masks for things like chlorine leaks. We got a whole bunch of everything else up there. We had to replace, and we also hired a new employee that needed a different mask. But most of this significant expenditure of $7,000 last year, I think 4,500 of it was for a crane. In other words, so you can basically you can assemble a crane with a bar and lower and pull out somebody in a confined space. And we decided to spend the money on it just because we wanted to be in compliance with OSHA. We didn't want to get any hassles with that. Plus, it is transportable, so though we weren't able to use it for one of our leaks, we have it available for some of our other leaks. And then, so I can go through a little bit of the budget adjustment recommendation. Basically, it's just moving $38,000 from some budgeted expenses that I don't think we're gonna need and into other budgeted expenses that we are gonna need. For example, we had increased the capital for our distribution in anticipation of potentially purchasing a new truck. Remember, that was a hot item in October last year, and I think since then we've decided I think it'd be better to wait, maybe put out some RFPs pretty soon for a VAP trailer, and then we could find out what that costs and budget it for next year, and really hold off on the truck thing, because that was a little bit harder to do. So I think we could move some of that money actually into those repairs and maintenance expenses that are higher than we had anticipated. On the organizational dues, we had thought potentially we would want to join the Special Districts, California Special Districts Association. They have a finance element that could be attractive to us. Considering our finances right now, it's probably not something we want to do right now. Plus, we're talking about changing our bank, and so probably don't want to be moving money back and forth to Special Districts Association at the same time we're changing banks. So it's about an $8,000 cost for that membership. So let's move that somewhere else, like into that liability and property insurance. And then there's an interest expense that we had budgeted $20,000 for, and after some investigation and after the finance committee, we found that was for the, I guess off and on over the past few years, the boards or the district has budgeted interest for the loan on the treatment plant, $7.55 fee. Well, that comes out direct, that gets paid to the state twice a year, and it doesn't need to be it's not costed in our budget, it's costed in that fee, so we can move some of that around, and then also move some money in the payroll expenses just to at least start covering some of those added costs. Then the other thing I just would mention, and then I think just so the community knows, we had an excellent finance committee meeting to review a lot of this. But one of the things that it was clear that the district had not been as open about in the past with the community, and I'm not really sure why, but not only do we want to be open and honest about all of our budgeting, expenditures, kind of where we're at, but we've included now a balance sheet so that you can see what our account balances are based on the accounting. You can see what our liabilities are, and you can see where some of our loans are, like with our dump truck and some of the other things that, and our filter plant loan, our backwash recycle loan, et cetera. But the main thing I really want to point out to everybody and the community, because I think we're really proud of it, and I think it shows the board's commitment, is that when they instituted the rates a year and a half ago, you might recall there was a, in the rates, 1.8% of the base rate is supposed to go into a reserve, and 4.1% of the usage rate is supposed to go into reserves. And so I have tried to show that on our budget, but the accounting folks telling me, oh, no, you can't do that, but we can show it in a different way. And that's why we have the balance sheet in here, because you'll notice on that balance sheet that there's an account 5030, which is the expansion and modernization. In July, that balance was 104,000. Now it's 118,000. So we've put $14,000 into reserves, and that is basically the 1.8% of the base rate. And then there's another account 5045, which is the operational reserves. That's had $1,000 in it for the last 4 years, from what I can gather. And you'll see there that the balance is now 14,713. So we put 13,709 into that. So that's 4.1% of the usage. So just for the board's purposes, for the community and those watching on the video, we're delivering on our promise to start building back reserves. With that, Mr. Chairman, my apologies for taking a long time. I just want to kind of go right through it all. Those of you that were at the Finance Committee heard all this already, but I think for the community's purposes, it'd be good to have that.
I don't know about anybody else, but personally for me, this year has been a time of learning, but the fact that we got a budget and it has the right numbers in it is exciting to me. And that we started having reserve accounts and actually putting money in them. So to me, those are two huge, big accomplishments that says we're finally getting on the right path.
Very good. Well, I think as I mentioned to the board maybe a few months ago, I think we're out of the pink and into the gray. I'm not going to say we're in the black yet, but I think based on other, kind of latter half of the year revenues like property taxes and other things, I think we're going to be fine. I am emphasizing the grant expenditure issues because it is a cash flow. Yes. Same thing for the couple of, the next item on here, which is when we, got to implement, as the board knows, our kind of OPEB fix. We have to have a little bit of money on the short term that gets us a big long-term benefit in the sustainability of the district. So that's a little bit of a cash flow. There's a dollar fee, and that, I think, the plan was to use that for future grants and loans and matching. It hasn't built up enough. It's currently the 5055. It's got about 53,000 in it. So we are starting to build that one as well. I didn't mention that before, to Director Beaver's point. So there's, I just think when you tell the community, when you adopt a budget, that you're gonna do something, it's good to be able to show that we're doing it.
So I have a question. To me, this is a huge accomplishment, but like you said, we need to start looking for grants in order to fix our broken system.
Mhm.
Is the work that you've been working with the MOU and the budget and everything, I realize that you do a lot. Is it easing up to where we could look maybe to get somebody who can write grants and will, cause I don't think that you have the time, nor should you. But some people will write grants and then for their pay, take a portion, or they write in their pay into the grant. Is there coming the time when we'll be able to, look into that?
Yes, and I think part of the sort of the planning out the year is, that's what we really need to get that going, so that we would have, I would be looking to have somebody on, like, the beginning of somewhere May timeframe, so that the new fiscal year, you'd be able to do that. The next item on this agenda has probably consumed over 100 hours of my time for a long time, and you're right, I mean, I've written a couple of grants already for the district, but the reality is we need somebody to help with that.
Well, we really need our capital improvement plan, so we've got a 5-year, 10-year plan. I have a question though, on the conference in Reno next week, one of the topics, workshop says technical assistance for modernization options. Is that, do you believe that that's something that would give us some options for modernization?
I don't know, we'll find out.
Yeah.
I think, you know, not to be too cynical about the federal government, but, you know, their mentality about modernization oftentimes is, you know, how do we get from the 60s to the 70s while we're in the 20s to 2020? So, I don't know, we'll see. And I'm hoping that they are gonna start having some more grant opportunities for their customers.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm hoping to have.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping that along that line.
Good question.
You wanna recognize Dennis? You wanna stand up, please?
I'll just make just some kind of general statements, since I've been working with grants, and I understand fully, what Paul was saying. It just costs, to, apply for, apply for funding, but it also costs to, run the grant and look after it. And there's a problem, lots of times that there's a withhold, the state will withhold some dollars, and up to the point, where the job's done and the state looks at it, says it looks good, and then get the withhold back. But the withhold can be a huge chunk of dollars that you spent the money, but you don't get it back for maybe a year or longer. And then just the time that you invoice, send out an invoice and then get paid. And sometimes you just have to tell the contractor that he just has to wait, until the money comes in. Some companies, when they bid, they'll raise the cost because they understand that they're not gonna get paid for 6 weeks after the job is done, or it might even be longer. So it's kind of you have to kind of work those hours into the grant at the start, because it can be a
through the chair, you know, the board, Dennis is right, and that's why you've been hearing me harp on this now since probably October. Completely agree, we've got to get grants and everything else. And we're gonna be pursuing them as much as we possibly can. But if you're not paying attention, they can bury you.
Yes.
So, you know, I've been talking to Pace Engineering since really September of last year when they were getting the final design of the backwash ponds project. So, just round figures of Dennis's little issue. $5 million project, 10% retention, that's $500,000. We're not gonna get that $500,000 until 2027 probably. And by that time, we've already paid the contract.
Yep.
So one moderating factor that we have in the contract that we signed, when Allen Gill bid and became the successful bidder, they acknowledged that they would not get paid, they would submit an invoice and they won't get paid for 120 days. Because we have an agreement with the state. Will they comply? We'll see, but they said they will pay us in 90 days. So when we get that bill, we're gonna send it to the state. Hopefully 90 days later, we're gonna get that, and then we can turn around and pay the contractor. But we need to find some sort of interim financing. So but by the way, some of this, 2 million of this project is Cal OES. They have an addition, you know, the federal government's got 6.5% retention here and another 6.5% over here. We think the state will cover one of those 6.5. So we're working through all that. And we've actually just sent an email to the state today. Will they pay the financing costs for the district to get a loan, you know, basically a line of credit to make all this stuff work?
Mm-hmm.
And I was under the impression back in September and October, I was told initially, no, the state would not. So that's why I was not pursuing a bridge loan for that. But yesterday, Pace, doing their due diligence, reread the funding agreement that the state signed back in April of last year. It says in there that if asked, they would consider funding the financing. So we've run it up the flagpole. There's no reason why they shouldn't. So back to this analogy, if potentially having $500,000 sitting there over maybe a 9-month period of time before we get reimbursed by the state, we'll have some costs, right, if we finance it.
It's another reason to build our reserve accounts,
Of course.
so we don't have to go that route.
Yeah.
You had an action on that? What kind of action do you need on this?
On this item?
Yeah.
Well, I described, it's on the second page of the memo, third page of the memo, just some puts and pushes on the budget. You know, adding $7,000 to the safety equipment and training for the treatment plant, reducing the capital improvements since we're not gonna buy a truck by $15,000, adding $15,000 to the repair and maintenance O&M that's already higher than our budget. Taking out that $8,000 in organizational dues, putting it into some of it into that property and liability insurance. Just making the water rights amount, since it was close to 21,000, we might as well put it in his budget. And then take that 15,000 out of the interest that was for the treatment plant and putting that some into the payroll expenses. Again, $38,000 moved around, no change in the budget, still a balanced budget. I would appreciate a motion and approval of a budget adjustment. Once we do that, I will fix it and we'll upload it onto on the web, on our website. I will just mention again, Director Beaver said, the other reason to be doing this, I know many of you know this, the previous rate work done by the Citizens Advisory Committee. They did a very good job with what they had. But what they had was insufficient data, right? So we're building, hopefully, 2 years worth of good data to go into our next rate study.
Can I get a motion?
I make a motion that we adopt the budget adjustment recommendations as proposed in this
just wanna make sure that at our finance committee, that the cash drawer and petty cash box, we need to amend the administrative policy, please. So it was increased to $650 from $300 because they were finding themselves going to the bank too many times in a week to get cash. And that's fine to increase it, but the manual says only $300, so.
Yep.
If we could maybe get that on the agenda for next, month.
Yeah.
One other thing I would like to point out, in a reserve account, we have approximately $50,000. These were fines that were collected when people overused or used more water than they were allotted. And we've set that aside, we used some of it this year to purchase McConnell water. We have approximately $50,000 still, and we've been collecting it. And it'll stay in that account for future water purchases if there's another, not if, but when there's another drought. So we have a little bit of money already set aside for that.
Just have a couple questions.
Okay.
The balance sheet is great, that, I like being able to see that. When it shows the negative, like on account 5,000, that's not like a negative, that's just like what was paid out of that like account, right? Okay.
Yes, and that will most likely, according to our bookkeeper, get fixed in the next one. It was just a misappropriation of an account.
That's okay, because I see negatives and I'm like,
Yeah, I know, it's weird.
and then on the truck situation, not purchasing a new truck, what year, if you can remember, is California implementing that half the fleet vehicles have to go into electric?
35.
Okay, so this year, and is that gonna be fiscal or is that December?
I believe it's gonna be fiscal year, so probably starting in July 1. There's still debate on the exact percentage of fleet that has to be electric clean, because I do know that this year I have to report to the state our fleet mix. So that part I do know is happening this year. So when, every future vehicle has, every 2 vehicles you purchase, one has to be electric type thing. I don't.
The only reason I ask is because if we're putting off purchasing another vehicle, is that going to then potentially negatively affect us when it comes to having electric vehicles?
Yeah. It's possible. I know there are some districts that pushed hard to purchase the diesel vehicles by the end of the year, and that was one of the reasons why it was gonna be really hard for us to
Which
get.
is not gonna be great because of the California laws coming through on that one too.
You bet. So in other words, they were taking the risk of, well, we're not gonna be able to purchase it down the road, so let's purchase it now, so we have it. Just the way California operates, they're gonna somehow obviate those somewhere down the road. So I think what I just took a little better look at first of all, it's gonna be hard for us to get a vehicle to replace that at a price that would work. A lot of utility vehicles were being consumed. It turned out the primary reason, it's a vehicle that has less than 20,000 miles on it, so its biggest problem was pulling the back trailers that we were renting. Okay, well, a lot of districts are going out and getting their own back trailer. I think that might be a better route, and we can get one, and that we can actually.
Lighter weight.
That way we can use it.
Right.
Under what, 8,000 gross vehicle weight or something, the smaller
10.
trailers,
10.
under 10?
And then is it, in future, if purchasing a vehicle, would it be beneficial to look at potentially stuff to auction like Ritchie Brothers versus going for something new?
So again, all those things are like, I think part of my thinking in November was, this district makes a lot of reactionary decisions, and I think it's better to just take a little step back. It may impact us negatively, but I think it's better to think about it more than just make a knee-jerk. And those are kind of, the other thing too is the way I envision it and the way I've seen it done when I was with Hidden Valley Lake and some other districts, is part of your capital improvement plan is an asset plan, an asset management plan, which has all your vehicles, all their dates, all their ages, and you start putting money aside to replace the oldest one, and then next year you replace the next one. So doing it on a more logical sense. One of the things we found out, one of the reasons why you'll notice inventory and tools is so high, is that for the last number of years, when a tool broke or no longer was functional on our primary vehicle to fix things, it was not being replaced. And so when I said, hey, we need to make sure you have the tools to fix the leaks when you have them, I get a list of every single tool on Unit 3 that needs to be replaced. I'm like, that is unbelievable. With all 5 shovels broken? Yep, they really were. So now we replaced them. It's spent a bunch of money, but I just said, you know, the logical way to do that is when that shovel breaks, we replace it, and that is more on a rolling basis.
Use a valve, replace a valve.
Right.
Makes sense. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Excellent. All right, well, thank you to the board on that. And again, I think it's all good news. All right, next item, 6D, retiree medical plan change and amended MOU approval. Again, just in case this might be the first time somebody watches the video on this item, if you're really interested in all the information and background, go back to our November meeting where we actually had a public hearing and I tried to provide an educational element as it relates to retiree medical. But just as a reminder, this is retiree medical benefit. It is not a retirement benefit, it's not the pension, right? So it's just the retiree medical. So as a CalPERS member of the district, we do provide, and you're required by CalPERS to require some element of retiree medical. In the past, this district set up an extremely generous retiree medical program. And in short, it was if you were with the district for at least 5 years and spent 20 years in CalPERS and retired from the district, about 100% of your medical premium was paid for while you were in retirement. Round figures, that cost the district, but we budgeted about $96,000 in the last fiscal year. It's going to cost about $100,000 in the coming fiscal year. Now, about this time last year, after I had been here for 3 months, you had assigned me to update the memorandum of understanding between the union and the district. We did. One of the major things the union wanted was to fix the OPEB withholding. We were not able to fix that or solve that problem at the time, and so we agreed to put Article 25.4D into the MOU that said that in January, we would do a step-down retiree medical plan for future employees, and we would do things like a minimum employee contribution, maybe a retiree health savings plan, or some other element to do, all for the employees to be relieved of their OPEB contribution. So, on the OPEB contribution, the district is required to do a GASB 75 report every year that comes up with your long-term liability. It's a 30-year liability. The one that I presented and gave to the board, again, I don't think the board had seen these in public for the last number of years, but they've been done every year or two for the district. Shows that our long-term liability was going to be close to $2.3 million, give or take, over a long period of time. And that long-term liability is your current retirees that you're paying their premiums on, and any future retirees. So that was the big thing. And then in that report is the current employees, their contribution to that number. And that's called the normal or service cost. And that's where this per pay period withholding was calculated from. And currently it's $150 per pay period. So we had that big meeting, regularly scheduled meeting in November. The union had made a proposal of a potential change. We met in closed session and we countered with a modified proposal and comprehensive package. And I also have in our memo just a real brief reminder that our goal, and I'm gonna read it because I think it's valuable to be reminded, find a retiree medical benefits program for current and future employees and retirees that complies with CalPERS rules, reduces the district's long-term liability to be fiscally sustainable, and makes the district more sustainable for longer, takes away the need for employee contribution to that long-term liability, and preserves or doesn't change the district's current obligations to its current retirees. So, as I mentioned before, I think we're for sure morally, if not legally, obligated to continue to do what we're doing with our current retirees. So we propose to the employees, and the union informed me on I think it was December 28th that they had accepted it. So what we proposed was that we would approve 2 resolutions, and they're in your packet. Both supplied by CalPERS to initiate the PEMCA minimum employer contribution and require minimum. So you have to rescind the old stuff and adopt the new stuff. So just so you know, we're not getting rid of our retiree medical program. We're still gonna have one, but it's gonna be significantly less. So now, the new program will be, if you're eligible to retire and you retire from the district, the maximum you will get to pay for your premium will be this MEC, or this minimum employer contribution. This year it's $157. So just for round figures, we do have some retirees that have a premium as high as covering 2 of people, $900. So in the future retirees are gonna, but they'll always be accessing CalPERS pooled medical, which is good. In other words, still cheaper than going out on the general market just by yourself as an individual. Okay, the second thing that we propose is amending and adopting an updated MOU between the employees and the district, changing that Article 25 to include the new retiree medical program, and then also creating a quote cafeteria plan for the current program, and quantifying the first $157 in this year contribution to our current employees' benefits as that minimum employer contribution, so we're in compliance with CalPERS. And we're gonna remove that necessity for the employee contribution. And to get all of the employees to not say, well, I wanna keep the old program. So all current employees and future employees, the board proposed to return all of their contributions to date. Obviously, if, just for round figures for the public and the community, I said $2.2 million for that future obligation. And by the way, that's not sustainable. You can see we have a $3 million annual budget. If you have an obligation that eventually becomes more than your annual budget, there won't be any district anymore, and nobody's gonna get that benefit if you have no district anymore. So by making this change, it's anticipated that long-term will get down to like $1 million, $1.2 million, and then as the current retirees expire from the program, it'll start precipitously dropping. And just also as a reminder, the district did, thank goodness, set up a trust fund to help pay for that. There's about $1.3 million in the trust fund. The other thing here was to communicate this change to the retirees, that it changed the way their benefit is paid for, not the amount of their benefit. So January 4th, the meeting with the employees, the union informed me that they would accept this proposal, and that they, so I'm here to report to the board a couple of things. One, we have we supplied every employee a letter that says for them to sign. The top part of the letter was to recognize that this was all about changing the retiree medical program, that they have no longer any rights to the old program and all of the old MOUs and all of the old, it's a formality because they don't anyway when you pass these resolutions, but they don't have any rights to that, and that the new program is what is described, and that the amount that's gonna be returned to them that they've contributed would be identified, so we had the set amount, and that withholding ends February 1st. And then they could elect where they wanna put it. It's their money, they earned it. We had proposed that we put it into their deferred comp or their 457 to pay for future medical expenses, but obviously they all can make their own financial decisions, and so we have signed by every one of our employees that letter. So all are gonna take it. So you know, you've seen the numbers, you know that reduces that long term. So it's got a cost, it's about $140,000 to get back their money. But again, they earned it, we were just withholding it, and it reduces our long-term liability by $500,000, if not more. We won't know for sure until we do future reports. So this before you is the implementation. You have a resolution, 2024-01. So you might recall that this district appears to do everything by ordinance. Someday we need to change that. Now might be a good time. I asked CalPERS specifically, can I change this to resolution 2024-01? And they said no.
You mean change it to ordinance?
Oh yeah, change it from resolution to ordinance. Just that one change, and they said, nope, our lawyers wrote this, you gotta do what our lawyers tell you to do, so we're gonna do it. And, so the one is rescinding, 2 is establishing the new program. We then have before you the amended MOU. Now, I supplied in your packet the red line pages, just so you knew what were the changes. Pretty simple, a new date on the MOU from February 3rd, 2023 to February 2nd, 2024. We got rid of the old Exhibit A. You might recall there was a transition period between some employees that may or may not have been out of classification, and so we had sort of this Exhibit A, we got rid of that. So there's a lot of red line in there of just not referring to Exhibit A. So now the old Exhibit B is the new Exhibit A. We did fix up a couple of typos, and then we rewrote Article 25.3A through 25.4F. And then the other main thing that we asked the union that they accepted, which was to add a year to the MOU term. Some of the members were a little concerned about this, but Steve Allen, their union representative, completely understood. And basically what I explained to the employees is that we need some time to get more GASB 75 reports to see how much money we really are saving in the long term. And so if you ask us for something in a year and we don't know how much we're saving, guess what the answer's gonna be? No, because we don't know. So give us another year. A couple of other items that are on your agenda, and then I'll ask the chair just to go through and we'll motion and vote on these. Item IV or 4 is to authorize the general manager to use accounts to fund the OPEB funds return discussion. So this item is that we have been told that we can get some of our money back from the trust fund. But as I mentioned before, and you probably saw in our balance sheet, we got about $37,000 in OPEB, 40,000 probably. OPEB withholding, in other words, really whatever, anybody for the last year that we withheld, we just put it in that account. All the withholdings prior to December of 2023 or 2022, those were already sent to the servant, those were already sent to the trust. And so we have 3 longer-term employees. And so those are the ones that we need to, we may need to, and this is why I'm asking your authorization, maybe take a little bit from our line of credit to fund this, and then we'll get servant money back returned, probably take a month or 2 to repay it. So there may be, I don't know, the line of credit that we have at the bank, which we haven't used. I think when we set it up, it would have like a 4 or 5% rate. It's probably, I think the last I heard it's at 10. But, we'll see. So that's asking your authorization of that. The last item here, and if you want, I can go through this again, but I'm just kind of going through it all. The retirees, our current retirees, like I said, if we have a retiree that's covering their spouse for, in this case, the CalPERS supplement insurance to Medicare, it's $900, I just use a round number. Currently, CalPERS insurance bills the district for that $900. And you may have seen in our activity report, we wrote a $26,000 check to CalPERS health insurance. $8,500 of that is the retiree premiums. The rest are our active employee premiums. On March 1st, when they've approved our resolutions, the CalPERS will bill us $157 for each one of those retirees. And the difference between the $900 and the $157 will be withheld from the retiree retirement payment. So we will be reimbursing them that difference because we used to pay for it all the time. So now we're gonna have to reimburse it into their account. This is what Shasta County does. I found out, and the city of Colusa implemented this program about a year or so, and they too are waiting another year to see how much money they've saved, but they're doing the same thing. The Tehama County Vector Control District also implemented this program in 1 year ago, and they have only 2 retirees that they reimburse. All of them have recommended that we get a company to do it for us. So in other words, we would fund the company, they will set up a healthcare reimbursement account, and then that reimbursement account will put it directly into their account. Number one, it saves my bookkeeper multiple hours of having to do it every month. Otherwise, we'd have to get people's direct deposit information and everything else. Number two, there could be a dispute with IRS on whether or not that's a reimbursement for healthcare costs or income. So if we fund it through an HRA, there will be no dispute about it. So Mid-America Trust has provided me a contract, and their California agent Keenan, for our 8 retirees, they're going to charge us $75 a month to manage us sending them the money and them depositing it into our retirees account. That's a bargain. Yeah. I mean, that's less than 3 hours of my bookkeeper's time that I don't have to have or do that. So that's before you as well. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate it. I tried to cut it down as much as I can because I know we've all heard this a million times. But I gotta say this is a huge accomplishment. I've spent probably 100 hours plus or minus. I have sent, over the other thing, back to the last item, I've sent all 8 retirees on January 4th a letter describing to them that their benefits not changing, the way it's paid is going to be changed. I know I showed that a copy of that letter to one of some of the finance committee, and if they have any questions, to give me a call. I also included in their packet the updated Article 25 that you're going to see today. I also included with them a little background and history of kind of how we got here. To date, I've only heard from one retiree. But they're gonna, next week, they're gonna get a whole bunch of other stuff because they gotta fill out how to set up their HRA account and all this stuff. So I believe the district is fairly treating its current and future employees, and is really putting a major millstone off of its neck. Yes. And I think we're gonna see the benefits in the future, a little bit of a hit early on. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I recommend that you take any questions from the board, any questions from the audience, and then we proceed through I, and all that stuff.
Okay, any,
Yeah, I have one question. What I didn't quite understand, Paul, was why is the, MOU effective, February 2nd? Why doesn't it say amended? So it's almost like it's a brand new MOU, and in the past, when we were looking at the MOUs for the district, there were a copy here of this and a copy there. Wouldn't it be better to show that it was amended February 2nd, 2024?
In discussions with the union representative, we thought it would be best, especially to get rid of that old Exhibit A, and all references to that old Exhibit A, to really, yes, it's an amended, but it is a new MOU and adding to the new date.
Okay.
So, I think there was, as you may recall, because you've probably seen them like me, there's old binders that have multiple versions of old MOUs that have a page full of the amendments. And I think as we move forward, let's try to avoid that, so that we're consistent. So yes, effectively, this is kind of a new MOU, but it really is it's an amendment of the old one, but we're gonna make it a new one. Also just effective on, most of the MOUs are always effective on the first day of the pay period after the adoption of the MOU. It would be a little awkward to have this effective tomorrow, because that's the end of the pay period, so that's why February 2nd.
any other questions?
Good question.
Anybody in the audience have any?
If it's effective February 2nd, does that mean that it's gonna be adjusted every February 2nd, or is it still gonna follow the same yearly like it was?
No, the only amendments will be the COLA amendment, and there will be no more amendments or changes until it expires in December of 2026.
Just checking.
Yeah.
Basically, it adds a year to the current, contract MOU.
Anybody else? So, do we need a
Separate motions, I think.
motion for each separate one, or would a blanket motion cover it?
Do we have to rescind first, don't we?
You know, I'm gonna suggest, I've debated mentally, because I prefer just one big motion and we just record it. But I think it would be great if we have a motion and a, on I, and 3I. And then for the last two items, we can just have a general motion for those.
So can I get a motion to,
I make a motion to, resolution 2024-01, which is rescinding current retiree vesting.
And I will second that.
all in favor?
Aye. I make a motion to accept resolution 2024-02, establishing required minimum as new retiree medical.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye. I make a motion to accept the amended memorandum of understanding with the new date of February 2nd, 2024, between Clear Creek Community Services District and Local Union 792, United Public Employees of California, UPEC for district employees.
And authorize the chair and general manager's signature.
And authorize the chair and general manager's signature down there at the bottom.
And I also, did you second that?
I did.
I also forgot to report that the union representative did come early, already signed it. And I think the only other signature would be the shop steward.
I also make a recommendation.
Wait,
Let's vote.
Oh,
we have to have a second for,
I seconded it already.
no,
It's a vote on it.
all in favor?
Aye. The next motion that I make is that we authorize the general manager to implement new payment reimbursement for retiree medical program. To use accounts like the line of credit to fund this action and authorize the general manager to request funds from the SERBT as per SERBT rules.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
So there's another one for OPEB,
V,
E,
item V, yep.
oh, V. Oh, okay. That's
Is that
correct.
not what you just did?
That's what I just
One
did.
more.
So down here at the bottom.
Down at the bottom.
By
yeah.
motion, and I make a motion to authorize the general manager to implement the retiree medical reimbursement for retirees program and sign a contract with a company like Mid-America Trust to accomplish this implementation.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, and congratulations. Chair Lincoln, you can't leave until you sign a couple items.
We're not leaving for a while yet.
I think too, the union and his he wanted, I think you mentioned that to the chair, right? To thank the board for all their efforts and this item.
All we did was vote. Someone else did the labor.
That's what I told the union too.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, you know, I think we had to do quite a bit of work, and we had a lot of meetings with them. And, you know, our employees are very engaged, and they ask a lot of good questions. Not to put an employee on the spot, but I think they're happy. Before Dennis Bosan leaves, I'm gonna mention it in the general manager's report, that, Dennis and I met about, as an extension of the community members on the Ag Committee, that, you know, there are a lot of groups in our district. There's the school district, there's the fire district, there's community foundation, there's a Happy Valley community group, there's Firewise, and Clear Creek Community Services District. And we talked about, you know, how can we get all them meeting and at least knowing what each other's doing. So I don't think anybody's interested in a million new meetings, you know, so something, but I wanted to mention this to the board. I know Chair Fickus had also sent me an email about that, and just sort of get the board's approval's not the right word, because it's not an official action, but acceptance that we, the district, can help facilitate that. I think, you know, we supply water to the community. We're a very important member of this community, and if we can help, I'm willing to take some of my time to help bring the school, the fire district, and people together. Even if it's just once a year, we all get together and say, at least we know who each other are, how can we help you if you need it, those kind of things. So, unless you have a strong feeling against that, I wanted to, before I did anything more, bring that to your attention.
Does anybody have any strong feelings against it?
I didn't know how else to put it.
Yeah, that's good.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Go for it, Paul.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Well, Dennis has an assignment. I don't know, have you finished that yet?
Just about.
So as a delaying tactic, before I came to you, I gave him an assignment. So there you go, you heard that. I've already covered a bunch of other things I wanted to mention about grants and finances, the desire to, now that this last item that you all just approved, I know you had to listen to me for quite a period of time, but it just felt better to get hours and hours and hours of work off. There's still gonna be a lot more to implement the program that you just voted on. But now I can start looking at capital improvement plans. I think we need to update our water shortage plan. Some of the other items, I just wanna highlight that, we did take delivery of our meters transponders under our ARPA grant, so we're gonna start, keep going all the way, Robert.
Okay, if I don't come back, call the sheriff.
Yeah. So, you know, we're gonna start working through trying to get reimbursed for that and, start installing those. Our emergency electrical SCADA project, it's, you know, the plan was to have it all done and tested in February, or in, December. It's about ready to get tested. One of the things that we found is the power that goes to the wells down there at Gas Point. You know, we put in all these new panels, we have a whole bunch of stuff that we can do remote starts, and all this SCADA electronic stuff, but there's no breaker from the power into the box. And two of the boxes, our electrician said that it is so infested with rats and stuff that you're gonna have to clean it all out. And I'm not reaching in there until, you know, 400 amps is turned off. I said, well, thank you, we didn't wanna have to pick up the pieces after that, so we gotta get PG&E to go turn the thing on. So someday we gotta get ourselves some new breakers put in there so we can do maintenance without that. So we're probably gonna get an extension in time from the state till the end of February to have it all up and running. As you've seen, the state has announced they have a between $40 and $100 billion deficit, you know, big old ups and downs. So now we're probably not gonna get any money. And I already told you they called us and said, by the way, your distribution rehab project grant, we're not gonna be able to look at for another 6 months, so you're not gonna get any money until next year. I am still waiting to hear back. I did apply for a almost $500,000 grant for a wildfire and drought resiliency assessment at the EPA. I'm a little behind on last month's water loss project, but we are still, you know, tracking away at our water loss sheet that I know you have seen copies of. It looks a little bit like that. So once we get that caught up, I've been talking to a few other districts. They are also trying to deal with this, and they've actually hired some companies to come out and test their meters. Because, you know, sometimes their recordations are showing up. So that could be one solution too that we find in this water loss. So that's it for now. I am going to be attending the Mid-Pacific Water Users Conference next week, if I can drive there, and we'll report after that.
I'll be there.
It's a little less, I don't know, you've been watching the weather?
Yeah.
Let's see if the Tesla will make it.
You can make it.
But the more, yes, we'll make it. The more it rains, the better it is.
Yep.
On the operations report, first opportunity by Shannon to help out with our accounts, identify their delinquents. I think you can see there, we actually did get some progress on these. We're down to 27 24-hour notices. You know, at one time I think I reported to you we had 250, and you know, then there were 90, and so we do have 15 accounts that are on alternative plans. And Shannon, do you recall how much we received from LEWAP?
69,400.
So the state assistance has supplied almost $70,000 to the district for people's accounts that passed due.
Yeah, they have to apply themselves though.
Yeah, well, we help them with that.
Right.
And I think we really owe Shannon a big thank you for the way you deal with it. because it's like Paul has said, people come in
Angry.
angry, and after you get to talk with them, they leave happy, so thank you.
Or apologetic.
Not all leave happy, but mostly.
You can't.
Those that aren't happy forgot why they were angry.
It's like you just wanna be angry for a minute, and you get somebody so nice you can't be. I did have a question on that, if I could ask. So, we showed that there was 88 accounts over 90 days delinquent, but of those 90, are some of those on a payment plan? Is that why it's showing up so high? Because you only did 27 24-hour notices. I was just wondering why we didn't have more than 27.
Let's see. So the accounts that are on a payment plan will come up as the 90-day
Okay.
delinquent. The accounts that did not yet receive LEWOP payments, but we did not shut them off because they have a LEWOP payment pending, they're also showing up.
Okay.
Yes.
Are there also some of the customers who have a meter but are not currently receiving water in there?
Yes.
So,
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, I don't know how Shannon feels, I mean, first, we gotta get the conversion to CUSI, that's by the way happening, and, I'm hopeful that there'll be a better way to differentiate this, because there's probably some of these accounts too that you just need to go into, the dead end file and just sit there and,
put a lien on the property,
and,
maybe.
lean on the properties and all the rest of that stuff. And I know we have a long list of some of those that you put over in this file. They owe $3,000, it's more than a year too old, and we're just putting a lien on the property.
Yes.
And that's a long-term potential accounts receivable, but not, there's no reason to keep, you just have a separate line item for those, right?
But if you don't put a lien on them, they can age out and you just have to write it off.
Well, and, we may have to make that call on some, but.
We did that
I know.
a while ago, and
Well,
it
we're
did
trying
not
to
sit
avoid
well
that.
with me.
So we talked about, there's a long list of those in this that need to have liens on them. But we're not gonna do that until we get CUSI up and running and get them in there, mostly because
Understandable.
CUSI actually has a system in which they do the liens for us.
Nice.
So we're gonna wait for that, number one. Number two, you also, at least my experience in other places, you kind of make a call. I mean, if you've got one that owes you $250 and it's been around for a long time, that's probably not worth the cost of the paperwork to do the lien. But if you have something that owes you over $1,000, then yeah, the lien makes sense.
I have one more question. Did you go through the distribution report, sort of, or am I jumping ahead?
Go right ahead.
Well, I just know when they were talking about the flushing, I noticed on Olinda, yeah, it's on cover that
It's
says,
the one that, okay.
yes, it is. It's saying it's out of order. So I wanna know how many that you've discovered that are out of order with the flushing that it's done so far, and what are we
You
looking
mean the
at?
hydrants?
Fire
Yeah.
hydrants.
My understanding, 2 so far have been found to be not in good shape and operable. So I'm
And-
working with the distribution supervisor, and this one in particular appears to be an oddball manufacturer. So we're getting a price quote to replace the whole thing.
And are we still then, looking at, we're still doing flushing?
Yeah, I think we're just about done, but we still have a little bit more, right? Just Happy Valley Road mostly.
Yes.
So there is a fire hydrant though at the corner of Olinda and Monte Vista, and I saw no signs out with that one at all, that you flushed it. So,
I haven't seen one on Pine down either, they're on Pine and Olinda.
Yeah, I'll just make note of that and
Yeah.
see about that. Hopefully I will get all of this to you at some point, but, we obviously get questions and people call and, why are you doing this? We've got some great videos of, like, the water that's coming out of some of these pipes.
Well, you do, that'd be great if we could get it on the website.
Yeah,
So is it yucky?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I'm like.
10 years of no flushing.
And what you need, you have, it's basically the sediment that sits at the bottom of the pipe or in these little low areas. Because, when you run your dishwasher or even your shower, even if you have a whole street that's doing it, it doesn't create enough flow to move that. So the whole idea of flushing is to flush all that stuff out and get enough flow and enough volume to get that stuff out of there. And it looks mucky and like, what? That's garbage. But yeah, it hasn't been done for years.
As far as the cost of those fire hydrants that either need repair or replacement, can the fire department cover some of that cost since they're really the ones who'd be using it?
Yeah.
No, so it's wholly owned by us.
But if they don't work, the fire department will complain.
Oh, yes.
Well,
Rightfully so.
in reviewing the minutes when I did, I think it might have been back in the 90s, is that there were several that had out of order, and then the paper got a hold of the Record Searchlight because people were really complaining. So we do maybe make a note in our newsletter that we are working on getting them fixed or something.
Yeah, just to remind you, I think, this is definitely, every place I've worked, it's always an issue. The fire department, whether it's a volunteer or a fire district, they expect those fire hydrants to work, and boy, will they raise, you know what, if they don't. And yet, they refuse to be responsible for any element of it.
Are we noticing the fire department of the ones that are not working, so they know?
It is in our protocol. I don't know about this one in particular. We probably should check to make sure that we notify them. I know when we bagged the one down at the South Booster Station, which is Happy Valley Road and Old Happy Valley Road, you probably noticed that one was bagged.
Oh, no, I didn't see that one.
But that was because we had dewatered that area for the project, right? For the South Booster project. And, that, they were notified, hey, we got a problem, we got a maintenance project going on here, it's dewatered. But I'm not sure about this one, we have to check. Thanks for reminding me on that one.
Are we gonna get a report once all the flushing's done of like which ones are operating and which ones are getting replaced, kind of thing, like in future board meetings?
Well, I don't know, we may put it actually in the newsletter, I don't know, but we'll yes, that's on, the distributions list, they're modifying it. Like I said, so far, it looks like it's only a couple of them that need,
Are they flushing all the fire hydrants? Cause, no, they're not flushing all of them.
No, this system's got some oddities, but primarily you're flushing them in strategic locations to flush out a line. So there may be instances where there's a line that we're using, like a fire hydrant near the end or at a bend, and there may be 3 or 4 in between, and we're not necessarily checking those. We're just checking the end ones. So you get enough volume to clean out that line. Again, traditionally, districts have, and that's part of the reason why I applied for a grant for the fire resiliency, is one of the things that they will point out to you is that you should have a valve exercise program. In other words, all valves should be turned on and off at least once a year, because usually what happens if you don't, when you need them to turn off, they will not, or they'll get jammed with some of the grit or different things like that. And part of that is usually, like I know in Hidden Valley Lake, we, every other year, so we would do a valve on maybe, and then we also had zones. So the other thing we don't have here, and something I'd like to have is a north zone, central zone, south zone, so that you can kind of also quantify water loss. But then what you do is you go and you check all those intermediate fire hydrants to make sure that they're on it, at least every 2 years get checked to make sure they're working.
And that's a grant that you're asking for now? Yeah, 'cause it'd be horrible to have a fire and then find out your fire hydrant didn't work.
Shout, yeah, so that is,
It's not
sorry. But that's why I'm looking for a grant. I mean, the grant is really to do this assessment. So what I would expect is we would have an engineering study. So one of the things that you can do to be more fire resilient, one, is you do look at your distribution system more in a zonal fashion. So in other words, let's say there's a fire on the north zone, you might wanna turn off the south zone, not the central zone, to just make sure you've got enough water to get there, okay? The other thing is to make sure that you have a program that not only assesses all your hydrants, are they in the right location? Are they the right size in the right location? What's your maintenance program on that? So that's the reason to do that, right? Because you want to maintain them. And the other thing is I don't think we have enough storage. There's a pretty easy calculation of how many gallons per minute, blah, 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 blah. Our little 4 million gallon tank might be out in 30 minutes, and if we had a big fire, and that would be, wow, we made sure all of our lines are working and all of our hydrants are working, but, we had to shut down the treatment plant and the storage is enough, so maybe we can then go get it. I think they'll identify we need more storage, but we can use that to go get a grant to get another 4 million gallon tank. So those are all the kind of things that you do when you're doing it right, and I think we can start working in that direction.
Well, you're doing a great job. The board is too. The board's doing a great job.
We are trying very hard to do the best we possibly can. Mr. Chairman, that's it.
Anybody have anything?
You're gonna go through the various standing committees or reports or anything?
Oh, I guess we could. We just could mention that there's been one finance committee held January 10th.
We kind of went through that, so.
Okay, and, I would report on the, meeting I had today, the EAGSA, Enterprise Anderson Groundwater Sustainability Agency. They confirmed that we will be getting early next month, funding for the second round of the grant. And we approved a contract today to pay for this year's annual report. It's just over $52,000. Grant money should pay for that. I asked if the grant was coming in all at once or we were having to submit payments. Looks like they weren't sure yet. I was hoping that if it was all submitted, it's about 2.3 million. If it came in on a lump sum, could we put it into an interest-bearing account and extend the life of that out? They were unsure, they'll let us know. They're a little skeptical on that, but taking a look at the annual reports, and they'll go up every year, so next year's annual report will be more than 52,000. But the 2.3 million, there's 4 annual reports and then a 5-year report. And the 5 year they're estimating right now somewhere between $500,000 to $600,000 for that report. So we're looking at hopefully somewhere in the range of 10 to 12 years of having those reports covered before it comes back to our district to pay our 1/6 share of that. So this has been really beneficial for the district financially.
Agreed.
Other than that, our meeting was sweet and short.
Anybody got anything else?
I've only got 2 people left here. Maybe I'll just talk with you 2 gentlemen. I want to set a time for our first agriculture committee meeting. I want to get that rolling.
Just for the ag chairs purposes, that does need to be at 6 o'clock.
Yes, it does.
Because we have a member that needs to come in from outside the district.
Maybe he can take family leave.
No. He's a hard working son of a gun.
Oh, I did want to just mention, I forgot, on that conference next week, it does say that the Bureau of Reclamation is going to give us a water supply outlook for 2024. So maybe we'll know next week.
I think that's okay.
Allocation is gonna be going up.
Is that it? Anybody out in the audience have anything? Then we adjourn at 8:16.